When you think about corporate finance, you probably picture spreadsheets, stock tickers, and cold hard numbers. A world of pure logic. But what if I told you there's a hidden compass guiding every single one of those big financial decisions? Today, we're going to dig into the really surprising link between a country's culture and how a company handles its cash.
I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? When a company decides to take on a ton of debt or invest millions in some risky new project, we just assume it's all based on super rational analysis. But is that really the whole picture?
Well, this is the core idea from a fascinating study by researchers Chetnak, Singos, and Akar. They make the case that a nation's culture, its shared beliefs, its values, is this powerful and, frankly, almost completely overlooked force that shapes how executives manage their money. It's like an invisible hand on the corporate steering wheel.
So, to really get this, we have to look past the numbers on the balance sheet and dig into the very fabric of society itself. Okay, but how in the world do you measure something as big and fuzzy as culture? Well, the researchers used a really classic framework from Geert Hofstede, which breaks it all down into four key dimensions. Let's walk through these because, trust me, understanding them is the key to unlocking the whole thing. So, first up is something called power distance. And put simply, it's just a way of measuring how a society deals with inequality. Is having a really clear hierarchy just a normal, accepted part of life? Or is it something that people try to flatten out? And you can see how this plays out, right? In high-power distance cultures, you get very top-down decision-making. The boss is the boss. But in low-power distance cultures, power is much more spread out, there's more collaboration, and managers are actually expected to delegate. Next up, we've got individualism versus collectivism. This one is all about identity. Is your identity defined by you, the I, or is it defined by the group, the we? So in a really individualistic society, things like personal achievement and freedom are everything. But in collectivist cultures, loyalty to your group, your family, your company, that's the top priority. Your whole identity is wrapped up in that social fabric. Okay, this third dimension, uncertainty avoidance, this one is a huge one. It's all about how comfortable a culture is with ambiguity and risk. To put it another way, does the unknown feel like a scary threat, or does it feel like an exciting opportunity? And you can probably picture this. Cultures with high uncertainty avoidance, they love rules, they love structure, they want everything to be predictable. They get anxious when things are up in the air. On the other hand, cultures with low uncertainty avoidance are much more chilled out about the future, more comfortable just taking things as they come. And finally, we've got masculinity versus femininity. Now listen, this is really important. This has nothing to do with individuals. It's about which values are seen as dominant in a society as a whole. So a masculine culture, in these terms, is one that really prizes things like being assertive, competition, making money, whereas a feminine culture tends to place a higher value on cooperation, quality of life, and caring for other people. It's all about what society rewards. All right, so now we have our cultural toolkit, right? Power distance, individualism, uncertainty avoidance, and masculinity. Now for the fun part, let's connect this whole framework to what the study actually found about corporate finance. This is where it gets really, really interesting. So let's start with a big one. Think about R&D, research and development. I mean, it is the ultimate bet on an uncertain future. So how would a culture's comfort level with risk affect that bet? Well, the study found a crystal clear connection. R&D spending was consistently and significantly lower in countries that had high uncertainty avoidance and high power distance. So here's the bottom line. If your whole culture dislikes ambiguity and prefers to get clear orders from the top, you're just naturally going to be less likely to pour a bunch of money into something as messy and unpredictable as R&D. The cultural DNA itself kind of discourages that kind of gamble. Okay, how about debt? Leverage. It's a fundamental choice for any company. How much financial risk are you willing to strap on to try and fuel your growth? And this is where we see some really surprising connections. The study found that companies in cultures with high masculinity and high uncertainty avoidance actually took on more debt. Now, that link to uncertainty avoidance might make you scratch your head. Wait, why would a risk-averse culture take on more debt? Well, the authors think it's because debt, with its fixed payments and clear rules, can actually feel like a structured, predictable tool, a way to control the uncertainty of the future. And here's another curveball. What about earnings management? Which is basically a nice way of saying, how much do companies kind of fudge their numbers? The results were not what you'd expect. Higher power distance and higher individualism were both linked to less manipulation. The thinking is that strong authority might just squash internal disagreements, and that individualistic cultures might foster a stronger personal sense of, I don't bend the rules. So let's zoom out. What does all of this actually mean in the real world? What's the big takeaway from tying a company's finances to its home country's culture? I think this quote from the study's conclusion just says it all perfectly. That purely rational, numbers-only model of finance, it's just incomplete. Culture is a massive variable that absolutely has to be part of the equation. And this stuff matters a lot. For any global business, it means you can't just copy-paste a management style from one country and expect it to work in another. For investors, it means that analyzing a country's cultural profile is a crucial piece of homework. And for all of us, it's this powerful reminder that our own gut feelings about money and risk are deeply, deeply shaped by the culture we come from. So the ultimate point here is pretty clear. Being culturally literate isn't just some nice-to-have soft skill. In our totally interconnected world, it is a hard, strategic tool for making smarter financial decisions. It's a real competitive edge. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We've just seen how a country's collective mindset can steer these massive global corporations. So the real question is, how do those exact same deep-rooted cultural values about risk, about authority, about community, how do they quietly influence the financial choices you make every single day?